Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scott C Business, and today we're going to be talking about blockchain and Bitcoin at a very high level. I want to do an explanation of Bitcoin that you could show to someone to explain why it's important, not necessarily how it works, but why they should care about it. Because like very technical things, it's very challenging to easily wrap your head around this in the same way that, and it's not like a pretentious thing to say, in the same way that very few people actually understand the inner workings in the back end of the internet. Everyone uses the internet, and very few people actually know what's going on in the back because it doesn't matter to those people because they just need to know how to use the internet. They don't need to know how to, set up a website in the back end, or what is a DNS server, or what an IP address really means. In the same way that you don't need to fully grasp what a blockchain is or how mining works, because these are all very new concepts that are very confusing, especially because they're using words that we're familiar to applying in a completely other context like mining. So what I want to do today is walk you through a couple examples and analogies of what Bitcoin is like, as well as how technology has advanced in the past and why it's not so important to get caught up on exactly how it works and be focused more on what it solves. But before we get into all that great stuff, a word from my sponsor. A big thank you and shout out to my sponsor Cake Wallet, which is an open source, non-custodial Bitcoin and Monero wallet that also has a built-in exchange. It's available on iOS and Android. Thank you so much for my sponsor, and now for the video. So the first example that I would like to dive into, because I feel like it's the easiest, and while I just briefly explained internet, something that is maybe a little closer to home for some people, like owning a car. So I don't know how engine combustion works in a car because I just haven't really looked into it. I've never owned a car. I'm sure most people driving cars don't fully understand the engineering and inner workings of their engine, and yet they can easily drive their car because they understand that the only things they really need to know to benefit from a car or an automobile of any kind and getting that transportation is simply just how the laws of the road works, as well as how to use a car to get to A to B, right? They just need to know generally how it works in terms of their usage, not in terms of how it actually works through and through. In the same way, with cryptocurrency, with blockchain, you really only need to know how to get the crypto, how to transact, how to spend it, because it depends on what you're trying to do. But for example, if you're holding Bitcoin just to, as a store of value, if you're treating it like it's gold, which is the way that I think you should look at Bitcoin, you're just holding on to it for a while. And the only thing you really need to know how to do is to buy and sell, and maybe transact if in the future you'd like to buy certain things. But there's better cryptocurrencies for cheaper fees in terms of buying things your day-to-day goods like groceries. But for Bitcoin, for example, and there's all these different cryptocurrencies out there, right? You could get lost in just so many different things that are out there. The main thing that you have to be aware of when you're getting invested in cryptocurrencies is, what are you trying to do with them? The use case of the cryptocurrency. Now, I've covered this before, that I see Bitcoin as like a digital gold, and you're trying to hold for the long-term value. I see something like Ethereum as programmable money, and you're kind of investing in the development of blockchain technologies. And then I look at something like Dash or Bitcoin Cash as a everyday transactable digital money for buying and selling goods, just in your day-to-day life, like groceries. So it helps to know why you would buy a certain cryptocurrency based on the use case of what are you trying to do with it. Because there's a lot of different use cases for cryptocurrencies. You can get really lost in the weeds. Like there's NFTs now for like collectibles. You can get tokenized real estate. You can lend cryptocurrency. You can stake it. All of this craziness. But for the person who's just getting into Bitcoin, who's just getting into cryptocurrency, just the basics, the only thing that they need to understand is that our current economic system with fiat currency, fiat meaning just like US dollars, Canadian dollars, is very, very broken, and it's getting worse and worse just due to the basic concept of inflation, which applies to all fiat currencies. And because of the pandemic and everything we've had over the last 2 years, the inflation of many fiat currencies has been getting so bad that I believe it's like 30+% of all the US dollars in history were printed last year. Might be more, might be less, but it is a very scary number that once realized in terms of our economy and actually seeing the effects of that is going to devastate our economy like so drastically. We're not seeing that yet because of money velocity, but I digress. You have to understand the problem with our current financial system to really care about why should I even bother with crypto or some new thing. The point is that this new thing is being created as a solution to the previous problem, in the same way that cars were a solution to how inefficient having just like a horse and a buggy were, or upgrades in technology for communication, like I mentioned with the internet, or and access to knowledge. All these different things, they're going to take a long time to actually get adopted and for people to fully understand them. Like I was mentioning before, most people do not truly understand the internet. And there was a time when only there was a small group of people who are building websites and doing all these different things, the same way we saw with blockchain at the beginning. So the best way to look at blockchain is like the third iteration of the internet. Currently, we have Web 2.0, and blockchain technology is creating Web 3.0. More or less, the original web ecosystem was very decentralized. And then it became centralized with all these servers and all these massive corporations building out all the infrastructure. And then now we're trying to re-decentralize it again in the third iteration. And that's what we're trying to do with blockchain technology. I feel like this is not high level enough as it should be, because this all sounds very confusing. So let's get back into another simple example. My favorite example of describing the problem with money, and the reason that so few people fully understand cryptocurrency and have adopted this and etc., is because they don't understand that that inflation problem, and that the money that they have today in the form of fiat currency is going down in value every year. And that is not good for your long-term wealth. It also incentivizes you to spend and consume more than you might need to, because you know that the value is going down. And if you spend it now, you'll get more value out of it. So you're incentivized to be a consumer and spend and not have money. And that is not very ideal for your personal finance, and just for growing your wealth long term and trying to set yourself up for a very good retirement, or just for the future, for future generations, whatever it happens to be. So the easiest way to explain the problem of inflation to people who either haven't wrapped their heads around it or just don't really want to worry about that kind of financial talk, I want to give a nice example that Alan Watts gave in one of his lectures. I really like Alan Watts. He's my favorite philosopher. And he described the problem of money and basically gave the solution to blockchain in one of his lectures about 60 years ago, which I find amazing. And I'm going to try to reiterate his example for you guys. Hopefully I don't butcher it. So he uses a measuring tape in his example. And essentially the way that he talks about it is, during the Great Recession, there was a slump. What was that slump? He says that slump was money, but they didn't have any less resources. So what exactly does that mean? So he's trying to illustrate why the money that we have currently is inaccurate and inefficient. So essentially what happened was we had this Great Depression. The value of everything went way, way down. And this was only possible because we got off of the gold standard for our fiat dollars. And so the way that he describes this is he says money was meant to be a form of measurement, right? It was just to measure how much wealth you had in whatever you had. So if you had, a wealth of lumber or a wealth of concrete or whatever it happened to be for building this house, you could measure that with a measurement. And that makes sense. It's easier this way to trade goods and barter and do all this kind of stuff rather than actually carrying around the lumber everywhere you go to be able to trade it with someone. So this makes a lot of sense. But the problem is that originally, you had 10 inches of lumber and that was worth, we'll just say 1-to-1, $10, and then it was worth $10. But over time, they stopped having the gold and the dollars 1-to-1, and eventually the measuring tape became less and less accurate to represent the same thing. What used to be 10 inches, is now 30 inches, but it's still $10. So clearly it's not accurate because it's changing all the time. And it was supposed to be 1-to-1. It was supposed to be an accurate measure of wealth. But because it's no longer accurate, this is very unreliable because now we have all of this wealth that is being changed and manipulated, which wouldn't be a huge problem if everyone had the same effect at the end, the same result. But the problem is there's only one person making these tape measures, right? And it's the Federal Reserve in the US. They're the ones controlling how long this is going to display. And that's the problem of inflation. I don't feel like I really beautifully explained it, so I'll link the lecture that Alan Watts actually goes through and talks about this, but I feel like I explained it well enough with the examples of the solution for the car and the internet. But in terms of the problem, it's a hard one to easily illustrate the problem of inflation. But most people are aware of the fact that every year the government is printing more money, which naturally lowers the value of all of the other money because scarcity, right? The more you have of something, the less valuable it is because there's more of it, and naturally it brings down the value of all the rest of it to make it more reasonable for everyone else. And that makes a lot of sense. But it was a bad system because the government controls all of that inflation, all that wealth. And as we've seen in the past year, they can rapidly inflate to an insane degree. And again, we haven't felt the effects of this. So I think more people are going to be coming into the Bitcoin blockchain space once they see how drastic this is going to be for their finance and how impactful this is going to be in a very negative way. But if you're in crypto, you're going to be impacted in a very positive way, at least from my perspective. And while none of this is financial advice, it's definitely worth considering because there is a problem. There is now a solution, and the big disconnect is just people not seeing the solution as being a real solution because they don't know about the problem, or they see the problem and they're just not sure if this is the correct solution. But for the most part, it's that people don't see the problem and thus don't see the need for a solution because people aren't going to drastically change their life. A big paradigm shift from cash to digital currencies, that's a big deal. And people aren't going to just change their life unless they have a good reason to. But I hope that I've somewhat illustrated that reason. I've touched on this many times before, but now I wanted to focus on why is Bitcoin and blockchain the actual solution to that problem. So another way that I look at this is money is one of the few things that we have not improved upon technologically. Everything around us is improving rapidly. Every single year, phones become much more powerful. Our computers are getting faster. Every 2 years or so, we're doubling in computational power. Our camera lenses are upgrading rapidly. Our microphones, our audio, everything around us, internet, automobiles, electricity, everything is rapidly improving all around us all the time. And then we look at something like our finance, like our money, and it is not improving. It is staying the same. Finally, someone has come along and made a drastic improvement to the main feature that we needed to fix: the integrity, accountability, and centralization of finance. Again, the person who can control this can manipulate this and do whatever they want. They have no accountability. There's no integrity to keeping it at the same rate or anything like that. And they can manipulate everyone's money at the drop of a hat. And we have no say or control or governments or anything. With cryptocurrency, that's not the case. You have the control, the true ownership. Everyone is involved. There is a set limit, at least for Bitcoin, for example. There will only ever be 21 million in existence. So having scarcity prevents you from being affected by inflation. All these different things that have been set up to solve all of these problems is so important, because again, we have seen all of these improvements over time. And really, what are these improvements? They are simpler things being made more complex, and by doing so, improving their efficiency and how intelligent they are. And what I mean is simply, when you take a bunch of raw materials from the earth, a bunch of metals, and you put it all together, and you make it all these, completely dumb, lifeless, pointless things, just rocks, minerals. You put it all together, and you got yourself a cell phone. This is a much more complex, intelligent reorganization of those materials to create a much better technological improvement. Originally, we had all these materials, and our upgrade to that was creating a representation of that with the form of money. And the next upgrade was to improve the representation to be accurate and not to be easily influenced, manipulated, as it was previously. And that improvement is the blockchain. It keeps the integrity, the accountability. It makes sure everything is accurate, so to your benefit, because the inaccuracies of money, counterfeit bills, inflation, all these things that negatively affect money, mainly just negatively affect you, not the banks, not any of them. It mainly just negatively affects you. So when Bitcoin comes along, blockchain, it mainly positively affects, again, you. So do you want these positive benefits? Do you want these improvements to your finance? You should, because we want all these improvements happening to our phones, our technology, all these things. We love it, but people aren't like calling for and looking for improvements to their finance, which is something that you think most people would really want to see improvements for. We've seen amazing improvements for healthcare, and everyone's pushing for that, but not a lot of people are pushing for improvements on finance. And you think they would, because a lot of people struggle with finance. So we need improvements to be made. And we finally have one, and a lot of people just aren't really, taking notice. And that's a problem, because only you are the one losing out by not getting, equipped with this knowledge and learning about blockchain and Bitcoin and all the things that you could do with this technology. People look at this and say, yeah, but it's volatile. It's going up and down and all over the place. Yeah, for now, all new assets need to get to a point where they stabilize. And even though it's very volatile, if you zoom out, Bitcoin has really only ever gone up over the very, very long term. And while, I mean, that doesn't mean it's always going to go up, generally, if you want to compare it to anything else, it is a much safer asset to put your money into, right? If I just keep my money, it's going to be worth less next year. If I put my money in stocks, that's a fairly good place to put your money. I invest in stocks, but if I put my money in crypto, it's going to outperform my stock investments, 5-10 fold as it has. And I mean, it's probably more than that, honestly, thousands of % increase. But at the end of the day, it really benefits to just understand how Bitcoin and blockchain is going to just improve your life rather than worrying about exactly how does it work. Because you could do the same thing with anything, right? Whether it's the internet or cars or quantum physics. If you get a quantum physicist to explain to you quantum physics, you're not going to be like, okay, yeah, let's buy some quantum computers, then I'm going to invest in da-da-da-da. It's like, that won't change your mind. But if a guy who is a quantum physicist has a product that clearly shows you that it's going to improve your life, and it's not going to like cost you a lot of money. I mean, anyone can buy $10 of Bitcoin or whatever. So it's very easy to get started. People just have a psychological block, whether it's, Bitcoin is worth $60,000 and I don't have $60,000, even though you can just buy 0.0000001, or it's, I don't understand this technology, so I don't want to invest in something I don't understand. How many people truly understand the internet and invest in technologies on the internet? Right? If I went to school for IT for 4 years for networking and IT security, so I do have a fairly good understanding of how the internet works. But if I were to ask anyone like basic, first year questions, most people couldn't tell you because they don't understand what the internet truly is. And that's fine. The only point is to just say that you don't need to understand something to truly take advantage of. So I hope that makes sense. If you do want to see a video on actually how it works, again, it's going to be super confusing and complex, but I can do it. Just let me know in the comments below. And if you did watch this whole video to the very end, I really appreciate it. Make sure to comment hashtag #1ham in the comments below. I appreciate you guys for watching, and until next time, cheers.